She's pregnant with my brother's child. I quietly disclosed that I had sold the house and filed for annulment, then watched them fall apart as I walked away with everything. It was meant to be a celebration, just a simple gathering at our home with music and drinks, where friends and family could come together and enjoy some good news. The kind of evening meant to echo with easy laughter and cheerful conversations. But as the night progressed, something else took shape. A suffocating heaviness settled over everything. I stood on the sidelines, observing quietly as my wife, Emily, and my younger brother, Derek, moved to the center of the room. Their hands were clasped with an ease that felt too practiced, too familiar. People had started whispering about their closeness recently, but I hadn't allowed myself to fully understand what it meant. "We have something to share," Emily announced, her tone overly bright, her words rehearsed. My pulse quickened, an unease tightening around my chest. Derek stood close beside her, his hand now resting on her shoulder, wearing an expression I couldn't quite decode. Part pride, part smug satisfaction, and something else darker, something I couldn't name. I should have known. Over the past few months, the signs had been there. Tiny details that didn't feel right. A glance held too long, hushed voices behind closed doors, excuses that didn't quite align. But I convinced myself I was overthinking, that it was just insecurity. I never imagined the truth would be what it was. Emily and Derek had always been friendly, sure, but I thought it was innocent. "We're expecting," Emily said next, her voice trembling just slightly. "But it's not my husband's. I'm pregnant with Derek's baby." Her words didn't just echo, they detonated. The room fell silent, the laughter vanishing in an instant, replaced by stunned gasps and quiet murmurs. Faces turned toward me, wide-eyed and searching, unsure whether to pity me or wait for a reaction. I'm not sure what they expected. Maybe they thought I'd break down in front of everyone. Maybe they were waiting for me to shout or cry. But I did neither. I stood rooted in place, my expression calm, my emotions sealed behind a wall. It wasn't because I didn't feel pain. I did. But it was buried beneath something colder, something long calculated. The truth is, I had already known. I had known for a while now. Emily had assumed I hadn't noticed her late-night texting, her sudden nervousness when I asked casual questions about where she'd been, or how Derek always had a reason to stop by, to help with something when I wasn't around. She thought I was too preoccupied, too trusting, or too blind to put the pieces together. But I was paying attention. I started keeping track quietly. I monitored the bank transactions, followed call logs, noted the inconsistencies in both their stories. Bit by bit, I built the puzzle. I could have confronted them earlier. There were moments I wanted to, but I wasn't ready. Not until I could make sure that when I acted, it would be permanent. So as they stood there, smug and glowing, publicly declaring their betrayal as if it were something to be proud of, I didn't fall apart. Instead, I raised my glass, keeping my tone even. "You must all be thrilled to witness this announcement," I said to the stunned room. "But I'm guessing none of you have heard the latest development, have you?" The room stilled. Emily's smile flickered. Derek's hand on her shoulder stiffened slightly. I let the silence stretch just long enough. Then I dropped it. "I've sold the house." Gasps rippled across the room. Emily's hand reached out instinctively, but I didn't move closer. I didn't need her to touch me ever again. "And I filed for annulment," I added with quiet finality. "Everything's already in motion." Their faces began to crumble. Emily froze mid-motion, her lips parted in disbelief. Derek's proud stance faltered. He was still standing, but I could see the mask slipping. I turned toward him slowly and delivered the final line, each word deliberate. "And you, Derek? You didn't just lose a brother. You lost everything." Their faces lost all color. It was like the world had shifted beneath them and they were too slow to catch their balance. What had been a party now turned into a room thick with silence. The guests didn't know where to look. Some stared at the floor. Others watched us like they were seeing a car crash in slow motion. Emily stood still, her lips trembling as she tried to wrap her head around what just happened. Derek, for once, didn't have the right words. I could see it in his face. He was scrambling for control. I wondered if they thought they could fix it. If Emily might beg me to reconsider. Or if Derek, always so slick, might try to shift the blame, twist it around so I'd come out looking like the bad guy. But neither of them said a word. They just stood there together, caught in their shame. I looked at Emily and saw the coldness in her eyes. It was strange because not long ago those same eyes used to look at me with love. Now all I saw was guilt. She raised her hand as if to stop me, but it was too late. I turned my gaze toward Derek. He looked like he was bracing himself for a punch. Maybe he thought I'd yell. Maybe he thought I'd cry. But I wasn't that man anymore. He used to steal from me all the time growing up. My bike, my books, even the credit for things I'd done. I used to let it slide. But I had grown up. I had learned. And this time I had planned every step. I've already set everything in motion, I said calmly. The house is gone. The annulment is filed. There's no coming back from this. Emily's face twisted in disbelief. I could see the regret creeping in. She tried to speak again, but nothing came out. She had chosen Derek. Now she had to live with that. Derek finally stepped forward, trying to salvage what was left of his pride. You think this means you won? He spat. You always were a loser. Just like when I took your bike, you cried back then, too. Some things never change. His words were sharp, meant to cut. But I didn't flinch. I stepped in closer. He backed up slightly. You're right, I said quietly. You did take my bike. You've always taken what was mine. But that ends now. That single line hit harder than anything else I could have said. His smirk faded. His bravado cracked. And in that moment I knew he wouldn't come back from this. This wasn't about just Emily. This was about years of being pushed around, of letting Derek win. But not anymore. I had taken back everything. And there was nothing left for him to take. Without another word, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could feel the weight of every stare in that room, every whispered comment and gasped breath. But I didn't care. I had done what needed to be done. And I had done it with control, with quiet precision. As I stepped out of the house, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For months, I had carried the pain of betrayal. But now it was gone. The car waited for me at the end of the driveway, headlights casting long beams into the night. As I climbed in, I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. The past was behind me, fading like the voices I could still faintly hear from the house. I gripped the steering wheel. I was finally free. As I sat behind the wheel, though, something tugged at my thoughts. Emily's expression. That moment of regret. That frozen shock. There had been a time when I would have given anything to hear her say she was sorry. And now, she had finally sent a message. It flashed across my phone. Please, I need to talk. I never meant for this. Can we fix it? My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to reply. Part of me still wanted to believe. But I didn't. I deleted the message and tossed the phone on the seat beside me. There was nothing to fix. Not anymore. As I drove away, the lights of the house fading in my rearview mirror, I felt a sense of finality I'd never known before. Emily and Derek would now have to live with their choices. And me? I had reclaimed my life. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel weak. I felt whole. They thought they had taken everything. But the truth was they freed me. And the best part? They never saw it coming. As I continued driving into the night, the weight of everything that had happened finally began to settle in. Not like a burden, but like a release. I rolled the windows down slightly and let the cool wind brush against my face. The city lights faded behind me, replaced by long stretches of open road. I didn't know where I was going just yet, but that was the beautiful part. This time I got to choose. No more living in the shadow of Derek. No more wondering if Emily was where she said she'd be. No more lies whispered in the dark. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't reacting, I was deciding. Still, my thoughts lingered briefly on the chaos I'd left behind. I imagined Emily still standing there in that living room, surrounded by shocked guests and silence that grew heavier with each passing second. Derek, pacing maybe, trying to piece together how things had unraveled so quickly. They had exposed their affair thinking they were taking control, that they were stepping into a new life together. But what they didn't realize was, they had walked right into the fallout I had prepared for them. Everything had been set. The sale finalized, the annulment filed, and all ties severed before they even opened their mouths. They thought they were delivering the final blow. Instead, they walked straight into mine. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I didn't need to read it to know who it was from. Emily. Maybe this time she would try harder to explain herself. Maybe she'd beg, plead, or try to manipulate me like she used to. But I didn't open the message. I turned the phone off completely. Her words didn't matter anymore. Neither did Derek's. What mattered was the silence inside the car. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but peaceful. The kind that tells you that, finally, you're alone on your own terms. As the highway stretched endlessly ahead, my mind wandered to the future. I didn't know exactly what was next. Maybe a new city. Maybe a quiet apartment far from anyone who had ever known my name. Maybe just time to rebuild. But one thing was certain. I was done living in a life where loyalty was a joke and betrayal came dressed as love. Emily and Derek might have each other now, but what they really had was a shared burden. A union built on deceit, a relationship born from destruction. That wasn't a foundation. That was a ticking clock. Sooner or later, the same betrayal they inflicted would catch up with them. Because when you build happiness from someone else's ruin, you don't build happiness. You build guilt. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to scream. All I needed was the clarity I had now. The knowledge that I had taken back control of my life, not by fighting their fire with fire, but by walking away before they even saw the flames. I had left them with the house full of lies, with the whispers of shocked guests, and with the weight of what they'd done. And I had walked away with my dignity, my freedom, and, most importantly, my peace. Somewhere along the way, I pulled into a rest stop, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to breathe in the quiet. I stepped out, stretched, and looked up at the night sky. The stars were clear, crisp, and unmoving. For a brief moment, I just stood there, letting the cool air wrap around me like a clean slate. I could start over. I would start over. And the best part? No one else would be writing my story this time. Back at that house, Emily and Derek were likely beginning to realize the full consequences of their actions. Maybe the guests had started to leave in uncomfortable silence. Maybe the whispers had turned to accusations. Or maybe Emily was alone now, facing the reality she thought she wanted, and finding it hollow. But it didn't matter anymore. That chapter was closed, sealed, irreversible. They had made their bed, and they would have to lie in it together. I took one last look at the road behind me and then got back into the car. This time, I didn't glance at the rearview mirror. There was nothing left worth looking back at. I had faced the storm, and I had walked out untouched. Not because it didn't try to break me, but because I refused to be broken. As the engine hummed back to life and I merged back onto the road, one final thought echoed in my mind. They thought they had taken everything from me. But the truth is, they freed me. And that's the part they'll never recover from.